one night I was trying to be fun and cool because I was dating a much younger guy. And I went to a bar and I showed everyone at the bar how to do a flaming Statue of Liberty shot, which is basically sucking on your finger, making sure it's well coated with saliva, putting it in ouzo, lighting it on fire, holding it like this, and then
Putting it out in
dousing
your
the
mouth.
flames with your mouth.
How shit-faced were you at this point?
Read my book.
I have.
Do you remember? I drank a bunch of shots.
Oh, yeah. Now
and
it's
I
all
ended up
coming back
having to
me.
go to the emergency room
Yes.
using an alias.
Hey gang, it's me coming to you from Sydney, Australia, where I've been for a couple weeks now, filming The Voice down here. Just loving being here. I've always loved Australia. I think this is my 15th or 16th time in Australia. Toured here many times. Toured here just last December. First trip here was I was 12 years old. My parents brought me to Australia for a month. We spent a month in country. Went everywhere. It was incredible. People are great. I've got a lot of Aussie friends over the years. I feel at home here. Everybody makes you feel at home here. And we have rented this cool house kind of away from the city to hide out. Daisy and I are loving it here. We just got back from an incredible hike. It's nearing the end of summer here, so it's still nice and warm and gorgeous, sunny, loving it. Today's episode I want to talk to you about a little bit because this was actually the very first episode we filmed for Stories to Tell almost a year ago, with my friend Katie Couric, who is a legendary journalist, as you know, and one of America's sweethearts. She's had such an illustrious career. She's so bright, but she's so funny and soulful and cool and so easy to talk to. She's interviewed me over the years, so this was sort of payback, I guess. She and her husband, John Molnar and I actually went to school together. We weren't really friends. We weren't enemies or anything like that, but we didn't really know each other in school. Grade school and middle school and high school back in Chicago. So it was quite a coincidence that she ended up marrying Molnar. We call him Molnar. And now they're a couple who Daisy and I love to hang out with. And whenever we can, they live in New York, we live in LA, but we try to see each other a couple times a year. And so Katie and John came to LA last year to hang out. She was working there, so they rented a house. And I thought, it'd be really cool to do an episode. This is when I had formed the idea for this show. And the initial idea was I would go on location. I would go to somebody's house. They could come to my house, but I could go to somebody's house. We could meet at a bar. We could meet at a restaurant, as long as we could get decent audio so that it sounded okay. My initial thought was that we would sort of do every episode would be in a different location. So it made sense for us to shoot this episode at the house Katie and John were renting. Looking back, we did a few episodes like that. Katie, Rick Springfield, and Matt Friend, those are all upcoming guests. At a certain point, on the fourth episode, we ended up at my home, sitting at my bar in my house. And we realized, meaning my team, who creates this show for you, mainly a guy named Jamieson, Mundy, we looked at each other and went, this is the spot. This has a vibe. We should just do it here. We thought, okay, well, let's do another one here. Let's see if we're 2 for 2. By the middle of the second one we shot at my house, we knew that was the spot. I feel like for as long as it makes sense, we're going to continue to shoot Stories to Tell at my home, at my bar. That's what you've seen up to now, the first 3 episodes. This is an episode, like I said, that we filmed in the very beginning. So you're going to see a totally different location. It has a different look, but it's still what the show is. It's just a chat. It's not an interview. I'm not an interviewer. I just love hanging out with people and talking to them over a cocktail or a mocktail and talking about all different kinds of things. Katie is so easy to talk to and so well-read on so many subjects. I think you'll hear a little bit of dated information. This is before the election, so I think we did some pondering about that. But the essence of the conversation was just 2 humans sitting around talking. And I love Katie, and I hope you guys love this episode. But if you're watching it going, wait a minute, this looks weird. This doesn't look like the other ones. Now you know why. But still, I hope you enjoy it. Our guest today is Katie Couric, and this is Stories to Tell.
Look what I got for you.
Oh my, what is this?
I was told by your husband, Molnar, that you like a spicy margarita.
I
so
do.
I made you a
You did?
special spicy margarita.
Thank you.
Cheers, Katie.
Cheers. That's good.
Wait for it. And
Got
there
a
it is.
kick. It's got a kick.
It's got the kick at the
I
end,
love
right?
it. Thank you. What a treat.
So while I was mixing those drinks, you mentioned we were talking about Hall & Oates.
Yeah.
There's this game that I play, and the only criteria is that in order to play the game, it has to be an artist or a band who had a lot of hits. So the game is, we're gonna arrive at your favorite Hall & Oates song right now.
Okay.
So if I were to say to you, what's your favorite Hall & Oates song, you probably rattled something off. But then we would really scientifically prove it. And here's how we would do it.
Okay.
So what's the first one that comes to your mind that's your favorite?
Sarah Smiles.
Sarah Smile.
Or Rich Girl.
Which one?
Rich Girl.
Rich Girl over Sarah Smile.
Yeah.
Rich Girl or Out of Touch?
Rich Girl.
Rich Girl or You Make My Dreams Come True?
Rich Girl.
Okay. Rich Girl or Say It Isn't So. Whoa, say it isn't so.
Definitely Rich Girl.
Oh, wow. Shade on Say It Isn't So right now. Rich Girl or Maneater?
Oh, I do like Maneater.
See?
Yeah.
So is Maneater over Rich Girl?
No, Rich Girl, I think. I think it's so catchy. I like the beat of it. You're a rich girl and you've gone too far, but you know it don't matter anyway. Right?
I'm not
you
giving
can
up yet,
rely on the old man's money. You can rely on the old man's money. It's a bitch, girl. And I remember thinking, oh, that's very edgy.
It's edgy. So I'm not giving up on other songs yet, though. Rich Girl or Leave Me Alone, I'm a family man, and my bucket.
I don't even know that one.
Rich Girl or I Can't Go For That, No.
Oh, I like that too.
Come on.
Yeah, I like that.
That's
That's a good dancing song.
Over Rich Girl?
Probably a better song to dance with.
Now you have a new favorite Hall & Oates song. See, this is why we play the game. And you can do it with anybody.
Really?
Yeah, you can do it with any band or artist who's had a bunch of hits. I'm so glad to see you. And I know we're going to get to go have a little dinner.
Yes,
with
we
our
are.
spouses.
So what is this, Richard?
It's really nothing. It's really not even a show.
Is it a show? Is this your YouTube channel?
This is gonna be for my YouTube channel.
I think that's awesome.
I mean,
but I
it's
still want
very
you to do a
DIY.
show where you go back and you interview all these interesting people you worked with.
I think that's
in
great,
your
but I
career.
think that's the show that you have to produce for me.
And
I'll
it's
host.
sort of based on your book, and Richard wrote an incredible book, you guys. Everyone should read it.
Thank you.
I
Although
loved it.
I loved your book too.
Thank you. No,
And
I
our books
loved your
kind
book.
of you hang up first. I love that our books came out kind of near each other.
Yeah.
So because we were in touch about that. Did
Yeah.
you have help with your book?
I had a collaborator who helped sort of shape it, and I had a researcher who helped find a lot of interviews and transcripts and speeches. Luckily, I'm a pack rat, so I kept so much.
Right.
But yeah, I did. And how about you? No help?
I had no help.
You're making
but I
me
had,
feel bad, Richard.
No. I had to, most of my songs I wrote by myself.
Yeah.
I don't play well with others.
No?
Not generally. But I did have to make some phone calls to people from the 80s and say, this is what happened, right? This is the way I'm remembering this. This is what I said, and this is how this went down, right? And there were only a couple times where people were like, almost.
Yeah.
You didn't really do that. Or
Did anybody get mad at you?
No, because, and that's what I was going to mention. One of the things that I loved about your memoir, I made a real conscious decision that I wasn't going to throw anybody under the bus. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's fine because if you're writing your memoir, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
But I do find that, like, recently there have been a couple of memoirs even in the last few months that came out by really well-known people. And I found them to be, while some of the books were entertaining, they were just bitch fests.
Really?
It was almost like decades of waiting to unleash anger on people, a lot of people who were dead, couldn't
Really?
answer for themselves.
Whose book?
A mutual friend of ours. I felt like if you have a lot of axes to grind, it is your prerogative.
Did you think I grinded a lot of axes?
No, my point was, I think we talked about this. I said, I remember there was a relationship you talked about where a guy really didn't do it right. And he deserved to be called out for being a dick.
Yeah.
But that's just sort of like, that's you saying, this is what happened. This is my side of that story, and I thought it was shitty. That's fine. But if the overall tone of a memoir is sort of exacting revenge on people, that gets tiring for me.
I agree.
Or just being catty.
I agree.
Or especially too many details or too much information about sexual relationships or romantic relationships. I think that's inelegant.
Yeah, I didn't do that for
No,
sure.
that's why.
But I wanted to let people know what it felt like from my perspective, all these things I went through. And I think whether it was losing my husband to cancer or, having a failed relationship where, it was confusing to me, or being in a work environment that was challenging and tough, and how it was challenging and tough. It was really trying to be just radically honest, but not necessarily settling scores.
Right. And if anybody was beaten up in your book, it was you.
Yeah. Yes, I was very honest. And
I really
someone said it
that.
was very self-aware, which I really appreciated.
Yeah.
Because, I think we all make mistakes, and I think kind of owning up to them and talking about them and trying to understand why you did certain things or why you felt in certain ways is that's really inviting the reader in to really know you in a genuine way.
Yeah. Obviously, a big chunk of your book talked about your first years, your ascent, and you talk in detail in a lot of the obstacles that you faced.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, maybe some from being inexperienced,
mm-hmm.
but most of them from being not just a woman, but an attractive woman. And the sort of landmines that you realized, I've got to maneuver, I got to do shit that men don't have to do. And you detail a lot of that. And I know that that's not unique to you.
Right.
But I wonder, because if anybody who follows you on social media, which you should, because her Instagram page especially is really cool. She's all these clips of her talks with people of every ilk all over the world. I would imagine that you've sort of fallen into a bit of a mentor place with younger, up-and-coming female journalists, I would guess, right?
Yeah.
Would you say, and maybe it's not an easy yes or no, that it has gotten better, or is it all kind of the same shit, different toilet kind of thing?
I think, I've never heard that expression. I think it's gotten much better. I think that...
But has it only gotten better because the repercussions now are severe? Like if you get caught doing that too?
No, maybe partially the deterrent factor, but I also think there's a much greater understanding of the dynamics of power, of male-female relationships, of sort of decorum and what you can and can't do in a professional environment. I think the rules were so different early in my career. There were so much
Boys
inter-office
club.
fraternization. Yeah, and I think there were a lot of relationships that were happening, and I still think they do, but there's less surreptitiousness about them, and I think people know that there are certain things you don't say to people. I hate to use the term microaggressions, but there are ways you behave and act and talk to people that are appropriate and inappropriate. And I think people have just become much more educated about it.
Yeah.
And I think people also forget that my generation was really the first to integrate what had previously been a male-dominated workplace, right? And now, as more and more people come in, and you're seeing women in more leadership roles and executive positions. And I haven't been in a network news operation in quite some time, but my sense is it's changed a great deal for the better.
When I think about the sexism involved in your business historically, and then I sort of compare it to, for example.
Isn't there a lot of sexism in your business?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the number of women, I know they're trying to change this now, Richard, who have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, who's making, and it's probably because the people making the decisions are men in that organization,
particularly in Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
For sure. But for instance, people like someone like Barbra Streisand, who ended up becoming a director and producing her own albums, and instead of that being championed or looked at as like, wow, she can do it all, it became like, oh, she's a control freak, right? Or if she's demanding on set, if a man is directing a film and he's demanding and he's specific, he's a perfectionist.
Right.
But if it's a woman, she's just being bitchy. Or
Yeah.
she's being, the double standard has been around and continues to be, maybe to a lesser degree, but I think it's still there.
Yes,
But I think
so.
a great example is, and maybe I'm curious if you agree with me or not, one of the many sort of big in the news cycle for a while moments for you was you asking Sarah Palin a really simple question. What do you read? Where do you get your information? What newspapers do you read? Magazines? This is a woman who is possibly going to be the vice president of the United States.
And potentially the president, given that John McCain was
Elderly
older and had had cancer 4 different times.
Right. So a question like that, which is as valid and important as can be, you got blasted for that.
I didn't really.
I saw it. I mean, you got blasted by a certain ideology.
Yeah, but even...
So the right, so the Republicans were like, oh, that was such a gotcha interview. And so my question is, okay, give me the premise that there were people on the right who looked at that and said, Katie Couric just went after her. Had it been Dan Rather, had it been a male journalist saying, Ms. Palin, what do you read? What magazines do you read? And if she got all flustered like she did because you didn't have an answer, would they have been accused of trying to be gotcha?
I think they might have been accused of being sort of bullies, even though that wouldn't have been the case for either gender asking those kinds of questions.
Yeah, it's a legit question.
It's interesting because that interview was actually not criticized by Republicans initially. I think they thought it was fair. They thought, obviously it's not a monolith, but they thought they were legitimate questions, that I asked open-ended questions just about policy, and the magazine and newspaper question was just sort of filler as we walked.
Right, I remember.
And I was really curious to see when, she had such a strong political ideology. I wanted to know what had shaped that. And it was really a question about what magazines and newspapers do you regularly read that help shape your worldview? And I didn't know if she was a fan of William F. Buckley or, she could have answered it in a whole host of ways. I think
Yeah.
she was just annoyed with me at that point because it was the second interview I had conducted with her. But until she complained about gotcha questions, which by any measure they were not, I didn't ask her, to name the capital of
Right.
whatever.
Right.
I think that as she was starting to lose, as it was damaging her, that's when people got more aggressive towards me. But I don't think it was because of gender. I think it was, but although I don't know, maybe subconsciously seeing two women together, it's often portrayed as a
curious.
cat fight, right?
Yeah.
And, there are all these tropes and silly stereotypes that are often employed almost subconsciously, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've
known each other a long time and we've had really great conversations, but I was thinking this is an opportunity for me to ask you some things that I've never thought to ask you. When you have to bench, especially when it comes to politics,
Mhm.
You have a set of beliefs. You might not be particularly partisan in one way or the other, but my guess is that you have to, over time, you have to sit and interview people who you are diametrically opposed to politically
Mhm.
and ideologically. And what it must take to really not let your opinions or your politics or your bias, if you have one, affect the way you're interviewing that person. And as I was thinking about asking you this, all of a sudden it kicked into a whole nother gear. I swear to God, this happened. 3 days ago, I'm on TikTok and some account that has nothing to do with you but just posts old news clips and
Mhm.
interviews and stuff. It's an interview you did. I'm not even going to say this guy's name because I don't even want to say the guy's name. But you did an interview with, for many years, a well-known television actor whose career ended when it came out that he had had inappropriate relationships with young girls. Does this ring a bell?
There's so many of them.
Well, this guy got caught and admitted to it.
Harvey?
No. Stephen Collins.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was one inappropriate relationship, right? With a babysitter or something, or he exposed himself.
No, I think it was multiple.
I don't know.
I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure it
think
was
so.
multiple.
Because I did an interview with him.
Well, that's what came up.
Uh-huh.
This piece, why? It's like randomly. I don't know what the
Interesting.
algorithm was that day,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my God, it's Katie. And this is a while ago. This is when he got caught and his career was over. It's probably
Right.
like maybe 12, 13 years ago.
Maybe like 10 years ago,
Okay.
actually. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm watching you do your job. I'm really watching you and I'm thinking, she has to find this guy utterly reprehensible. But she also can't show that because you're there to try to make some sense of that story and deliver information. I remember at one point in the clip, there was like a 2-minute clip. And at one point you asked him something and he answered you and you went, well, that's just weird. You're like, and I thought, well, that was a moment where you were just like, dude, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But I could tell and I also knowing you a little bit, and also this wouldn't be surprising that someone would be outraged by this guy's behavior. But I wonder what it's like. Does it take a lot of work to like bench your own opinions and feelings and?
I mean, it depends on the interview and on the subject, honestly. Today it's such a different political environment. I mean, back in the day, you could have a George Bush who has very different views than Al Gore. And, so I think you ask just straight up questions and you're curious about their answers. Now, the Republican Party has been so co-opted by MAGA and by sort of this philosophy where facts don't matter and the truth doesn't count. That is a very different environment. But I think for most of my career, yes, I've been able to ask challenging questions of everyone, and to make sure that I am asking questions that people watching are going to want to know the answer for. I think later in my life, I've been a little more transparent about how I feel about certain issues. I mean, I'm very opinionated about gun violence,
Yeah.
for example, having covered so many school shootings and having worked on a documentary about that. And I feel very strongly that we need to address it in a more serious way. And so I think people who follow me or know me know that that's an issue I care deeply about. I think reproductive rights is another issue I care deeply about. And I think in the later stages of my career, I've been more comfortable being much more overt about that than I
Okay.
would have, say, when I anchored the Today Show or the Evening News.
I guess to put a button on it, because I am curious about this. If, you're at a point now where you create your own programming and you do what you want to do because you earned that. But if something came up where you were like, oh, I've got an opportunity, but it's going to mean that I'm going to have to sit down with Lauren Boebert.
Mm-hmm.
Could you do this and not show, or like see a moment where you could just obliterate her and tell yourself, I really can't
think
do that?
just asking questions about her behavior is sort of
she does the work for you.
Right. I really believe that. But I would be interested in understanding what makes her tick.
Yeah.
And kind of, again, how her political views were shaped, why she has said certain things she said. I mean, these are incontrovertible, right? Some of the things that she's put out there in the world. So I
why
could
don't
definitely
we
do a respectful but challenging interview with Lauren Boebert.
Why don't we ever see a version of that with somebody else? As someone who does follow the political landscape, you look at someone like, and I'm going to be using examples, obviously, of people on the far right.
Right.
But I look at someone like Jim Jordan. And let's just, the list could go on, but let's just look at what he's accused of doing at Ohio State. Why is there no video of a journalist sitting down and point blank asking him and holding him to account for an answer, a real answer, not dodging it? So I've watched you I've watched people try to masterfully not answer a question and you don't let it go. You go, well, you didn't really, I appreciate that, but you didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
Why don't we see that kind of interviewing anymore?
I think, the media landscape has become so bifurcated, and you really mostly see people who agree with various leaders or political figures on a network where they're going to be asked good, not difficult questions. And so most Republicans go on Fox and most Democrats go on MSNBC. And then I think you do see an effort by the network news to do interviews like this. But I almost think they're shying away because it's very hard to cover the political landscape objectively today. And you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. So yeah, it's a very tough environment, I think. And we used to interview Democrats and Republicans, but it was really on policy differences, and that was pre-Trump. And he, I think, in many ways changed everything.
Yeah. So with that in mind, last media question. Do you think, as a tax-paying citizen, that in 2024, the mainstream media as a whole is trustworthy?
Yes.
Wow. I don't.
No.
But I don't know as much as you.
I mean, that's not true. I mean, you're an intelligent, well-read person.
That's true.
I think they are really trying their hardest. And why don't you think that? And then I could maybe be more responsive.
Yes, for the most part, absolutely. It was a great answer that, the Republicans are only going to go on Fox. They're only going to go where it's a safe space. And the Democrats, the same thing. First of all, I'm not partisan. I'm kind of like not a fan of any politician.
Mhm.
I have sort of an inherent distrust of politicians. But I look at someone like Gavin Newsom who goes and sits down with Tucker Carlson
Or yeah. Oh, or debates Ron DeSantis.
or debates Ron DeSantis.
Mhm.
I have at least some respect for someone who's going to go into that situation. But I don't really know what deals have been made prior to that. I don't know if anything is really truly off limits. And the sort of lack of trust of how that game is played, and it is a game, has over time made me believe that there is always some deal being made, or always I've become so cynical about the media to the point where I don't feel that it's overall trustworthy. And so someone like me who wants to have an educated opinion about things and to be knowledgeable, but not in a way that if what I consider to be fact turns out to be complete bullshit, that gets really frustrating to the point where you just want to kind of tune out of it. And
Yeah.
I just want to drink margaritas and walk on the beach. You know what I mean?
I mean, when I read the New York Times and the Washington Post, and I know that some articles may have a certain slant,
Yeah.
right? But then I read various columnists to get their takes on things. And they're trying to report what's happened. They're trying to give some kind of historical perspective. They're helping me understand a situation or a story or a circumstance. I do believe that they are trustworthy. I do. And I get my information from a whole variety of sources.
So do I.
So I try to get the big picture.
I love The Week. Do you like The Week?
I do. I do. I mean, it's for people who have the attention span of a gnat, but but yeah, it's good. But
I resemble that remark.
And I'll look at a piece David Brooks, who's a Republican, writes about the failure to come up with comprehensive immigration reform.
Yep.
And you'll hear a different view from the Republicans why they didn't embrace it. And then I'll read enough sources to say they didn't embrace it because they want to use it as a political issue for the campaign.
Sure.
And it was a bipartisan, and I'll read enough that I feel like I'm armed with enough information that I can draw a conclusion that I think by and large is fairly accurate. Now, it may not match the narrative that I'm being told by certain publications or certain politicians, but I feel like I know enough about the people covering these things and writing about them that I can be pretty discerning about who I trust.
That's great.
And it's not necessarily some, yakety yak talk show, shock jock who's now on cable news.
Yeah.
Kind of giving the people what they want. But it's a well thought out, intelligent analysis of what transpired. So I look for those kinds of articles. And in those cases, I really do trust them.
That makes me happy. I mean, that gives me a little dose of optimism.
And I try to read The Economist. I try to read the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine. And, I try to parse out what is true and what is factual and how I can base my opinion on actual facts.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is interpreting news and analyzing it and giving their take. But some things are just, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty...
that's hard to find,
I'm pretty
though.
confident.
It's really, I find it harder and harder to just find out what really happened.
Yeah.
Because the echo chamber is so loud.
Right. And everything is affirmation, not information,
Yeah.
right? But...
And I feel like...
And I'm sure I have a particular point of view. And of course, I'm fed algorithmically stories
we all are.
that match my point of view. So it's reinforced.
Yeah.
But, I hope that I have an honest understanding of what's gone on. But sometimes I'm like, I don't understand this. I'm hearing two sides of the story and I don't know what's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's less of the mainstream media and more of the politicians who are shaping the narrative.
Even, I mean, Trump is the perfect example. I bet even when he's in a situation where it isn't just a Fox News or a Newsmax or a situation like that, apparently the only way he'll do that is to be promised that certain questions won't be asked or certain things won't be raised. And in that case, to me, that's automatically bullshit.
Right.
The president of the United States, more than anybody else, should always be able to be asked any question by any member of the country,
I
by
agree.
any taxpaying citizen, and he owes them an answer.
Yes, I think he's probably struck that deal
Yeah.
with people. And if he doesn't, he just talks over them.
Right.
And it becomes just, chaos.
And does this. Plays the accordion. When he's not doing this,
Or
whatever that is.
This, as
Yeah.
Bill Maher says, jerking off two men at the same time. Bill, he shows that clip all the time.
Bill, he's always emphasizing the shit out of the subtlety. Switching gears, I know a lot of people know that you're a big music freak.
Yeah.
I don't know how it started. I know you play the piano and you play beautifully.
Not really.
You do. You
I
played
don't.
my song. You played my song beautifully.
I took for 10 years. I think I must have been 5 years old when I sat on our little bench on our upright piano at home. I've always been able to play by ear, which is so weird. Or do you play by ear?
Yeah, but I do read music.
Yeah.
But I learned to play by
I
ear.
took piano lessons for 10 years, but I've always been able to just
Pick
mostly,
stuff
unless it has a lot of sharps and flats and things, but been able to figure out songs on the piano, which hurt me when I was taking lessons because I could always sort of figure out.
Yeah.
But I played classical music in piano lessons. But, I don't know. I've just always loved music. I used to listen to my dad's records in the basement. He had Frank Sinatra in the Capitol years.
Yeah.
And Softly as I Leave You. And I remember they had other, Annie Get Your Gun. We went to see that at the National Theater with my parents. I remember I was 6 when they took me to The Sound of Music. So I've always loved musicals.
Did you play or sing in school?
I tried. I don't sing very well. I auditioned for a role in Carnival where the big song was Love Makes the World Go Round. And they cast me as a deaf mute. Yeah. I was really hurt.
Oh.
But that's okay. I love to sing.
Hey, Katie, the good news is you got a part.
Yeah, the bad news.
Bad news is they were back said, what the fuck are we going to do with Katie Couric?
Yeah.
Well, make her the deaf mute.
I sing better than anyone in my family, but that's not saying much.
I understand.
I can carry a tune. I don't have much range. And I used to think I sounded just like Karen Carpenter when I was young.
Nobody sounded like Karen Carpenter.
I mean, she just had this. There is somebody on TikTok
Yes.
Have you heard her?
Yes.
She sounds just like Karen Carpenter.
It's crazy. She's British, I think, right?
I don't know. She has blonde hair.
Yeah.
And she just sits in front of, have you all heard this? She sits in front of a
Have
mic.
you know what I'm talking about?
And it's amazing. She sounds just like her.
It's crazy.
Right?
But I mean, she's kind of her own. She's doing her own thing.
She's
writing songs, but
when she sings Carpenter songs like We've Only Just Begun or
I couldn't believe it.
Rainy Days and Mondays, it's like, oh my God.
Are we gonna play the Carpenters game now?
I know all the Carpenter songs.
I know, but we wouldn't.
And Richard Carpenter was such a talented arranger. I sometimes think he gets overlooked. And songwriter.
He wrote Only Yesterday.
Yeah.
He wrote Yesterday Once More.
Yeah. Burt Bacharach wrote Close to You.
Yeah.
Top of the World. I don't remember who wrote that. But
you know who wrote Rainy Days and Mondays?
Give me a hint.
Little guy.
Paul, the guy who wrote Rainbow Connection.
Yes.
Paul Williams. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
He wrote Evergreen.
Really?
He wrote Just an Old-Fashioned Love Song.
He did? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Paul Williams is like one of the greatest.
Is he still alive?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually know him. I'm in touch with him here and there.
I love the Rainbow Connection that when Kermit sings it. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know he wrote all those songs. I learned recently that Shel Silverstein, the poet, wrote a lot of songs.
He wrote
Did you
Boy
know
Named
that?
Sue.
Huh?
He wrote A Boy Named Sue for Johnny Cash.
Yes, and
Yeah.
he wrote some other songs too.
He did. The thing that's funny about Shel Silverstein, and a friend of mine who you might have met over the years, you know who Shelley Wright is, the country singer?
No.
You would know her more because about a dozen years ago, she came out. She was one of the few country stars who was secretly gay who came out, wrote a book, was on, Oprah and became an activist, for the LGBTQ movement. And she's been a friend of mine for a long time. And she was friendly with Shel Silverstein.
Really?
But I remember there was one book in particular, or maybe all of his books, had the same photo of him on the back. He looked like a psycho killer.
Right?
He looked like a mass murderer.
It was one of his poetry books. It was like
And
The
there's
Light in the Attic or Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Beautiful child.
Well, they're funny. They're not. They're less beautiful and more clever and funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you turn it over, and I was like, really? Nobody said maybe a little less. Like the picture's like, like he's gonna.
Yeah, he's very. He had that beard, and I think super tall and
died a
thin
few
and
years
rangy.
ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I somehow must have been Googling something or looking, and I didn't realize he wrote as many songs as he did.
Yeah. A woman in her 60s is walking on the beach, and she trips over something, and she looks back and she sees something in the sand. She picks up, it's a lamp, and she dusts the sand off. Of course, a genie pops out, and the genie says, I think you've probably heard enough stories of these. You know how this works. You get 3 wishes, anything you want. Now, the only caveat with me, this particular genie, is that anything you wish will be granted, but it'll be granted 10 times that for your husband. And the woman went, oh, okay. She goes, what's your first wish? And the woman said, wow, I want to be the most beautiful woman in the world. And she went, okay, just so you understand, that means your husband is going to be 10 times more handsome. And she went, I'm okay with that. Okay, you got it. What's the next wish? She says, I want $100 million. She goes, okay. That's going to make your husband a billionaire. She goes, yes. She goes, okay, last wish. And the woman went, I want you to give me a mild heart attack.
That's funny.
It's good, right? Come on.
I like it.
Come on.
Cheers.
I knew you'd like it. Come on, it's a good one.
That is a good one.
I have to give credit for that, actually. Tim McGraw told me that.
Really?
Yeah.
How is Tim
a couple
McGraw?
nights ago. You must know him a little bit, right?
I don't really. I mean, I've met him.
You would love both of them.
Yeah.
Tim and Faith are just like 2 of the coolest, classiest people. We had dinner with them a few nights ago, and I've become friends with him in the last, really over in the last year and a half or so.
How did that happen?
We have a couple of mutual friends in Nashville who are songwriters, and they kept saying, you guys need to know each other. We met over the years. We'd see each other at an event or something, we'd high five or...
Yeah.
But so we went to dinner in Nashville a little while ago, and then we stayed in touch on text every once in a while, just saying hi. And then he came here last year and launched a new album at the Whiskey. He did a gig at the Whiskey to launch this new album. So he invited me and Daisy, but then he said, would you be up for doing a song? We'd get up and could be my surprise guest.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, man. I said, I know, most of your hits. He goes, no. One of your songs. So his band worked up my first hit, Don't Mean Nothing. And Tim and I did it as a duet, and it was so fun. And then we ended up going to dinner, and then they came to our house. And it's just one of those things, you don't know somebody and you don't know somebody, and then you meet them and you spend a little time with them, you're like, these are our people.
Yeah. Oh, fun.
So we had dinner a couple nights ago. You would love them.
Would you ever move to Nashville?
No.
No.
I've spent a lot of time there. My ex-wife is from there.
Right.
I have great friends there, but I'm a Californian. I grew up in Chicago.
Yeah.
This is California's me. This is my home.
Yeah.
I have a gift for you because I know that you grew up and still love great female singer-songwriters.
I do.
And I think you might know who this is, but I know you don't have, now Molnar says you don't have a turntable at home, but
we have one here.
Yeah, but it's just something to have. This is one of my favorite albums of a more, not super modern, but
yeah.
Do you know Imogen Heap?
I don't.
She's did the song Hide and Seek, and she was in a group before called Frou Frou. And
Is she from DC?
No, she's British.
Oh, because
she's British.
That looks like the capital.
She's a great piano player. She produces and writes all of her own music. She plays all the instruments, usually in the synthesizer. But she's also, I've seen her live where she just sits and plays piano and sings. And I think you'll really love that.
Thank you. That was so nice of you, Richard. John was listening to Billie Eilish on repeat.
Yeah.
He likes the Barbie. He likes the Barbie song.
Of course he does. By the way, we have to, before part of this, we have to explain. So Katie and I had met several times. She interviewed me before. We ran into each other, I think, over the years. We never hung out.
Yeah.
But we always liked it. It was,
yeah.
I always got a good feeling whenever I was around you or when you would interview me. And then about 10 years ago, I was getting divorced and I had a new album out and I came to New York and you had a show at the time and I went on your show and I hadn't seen you in several years. And in the first commercial break, you said, or before the show, you said, hey, I know that you're single and is it okay if I talk about it? And I said, yeah, and I hadn't told anybody. It was not public knowledge.
Yeah.
And so you sort of broke that out there for me. And but in the first commercial break, you said, you know, I'm always happy to see you, but I really wanted to see you because I'm dating somebody who I think you know. And I said, who? And you said, John Molnar. And I went, John Molnar, John Molnar, John Molnar, John Molnar? Now, this is a guy that I went to middle school and high school with.
Yeah.
We weren't pals.
Yeah.
We didn't dislike each other, but we just sort of like passed in the hallway. Like we knew each other, and what's really awesome is that your relationship with Molnar has now forged a real friendship between me and him, and now the four of us hang out.
Isn't that funny?
I love how life works.
I do too. Two Chicago boys.
Yeah, two Chicago boys carrying the torch.
So tell me about this thing that you're doing. Who are you talking to? What are your goals? Tell me, because I'd like to just hear that.
Part of my goal, if you will, is sort of feeling it out as I go, because I did like you did my little YouTube, my social distancing thing during the pandemic, and I thought, I enjoy this. I enjoy being in the other chair. I don't want it to be too music-centric, because I've kind of done that, but you know, to some people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to make it as diverse as possible. So my next victim in a couple of days is Matt Friend, and there's another Chicago connection.
Oh yeah, so the guy who does the impersonations.
Yeah, these amazing impressions of Howard Stern and Trump and Jeff Goldblum. And I reposted something of his because he kept showing up in my feed, in my Instagram feed.
And John loves him too.
Yeah, so I put him in my story. And I said, if you haven't checked this guy, Matt Friend, out, he's so great, does the best Trump impressions and many others. And he DM'd me and he said, thank you so much for the shout out. He goes, also, my dad says hi. And I go, who's your dad? He goes, Bill Friend, another guy that we went to school with.
That's
in Chicago.
So funny.
So now I've gotten to know Matt.
Yeah.
And so we're actually gonna go to a bar called the Friend Bar.
Oh, fun.
That Jamieson knows, the owner. So we're going to go over there on Wednesday and do a little one of these with him over there. Oh, how fun.
And you're going to get him to do a bunch of impersonations.
I don't know. I really want to get a sense of how he got into stand-up and how the mimicry really started. And I'm sure he'll bust out some voices for us. And then the next day I'm going to Rick Springfield's house. And Rick and I have been friends for 40 years. And we were on tour together a lot of this year. And that's an easy one too. So I'm sort of like doing them.
Just having fun with it.
Having fun. And I have a pretty big audience on YouTube as it is.
Yeah.
You know, so why not just do this?
Yeah, definitely. And you'll have to have John Molnar as a guest.
Yeah.
Call my people.
That'll have to be a double episode. To borrow one of my famous song titles, is there a moment in your life that you should have known better, where you should have known better? Did something happen ever?
Where I should have known better. Oh, there have been many times where I should have known better.
Does something come to mind?
Let's see.
Agreeing to do this?
No. I should have known better when one night I was trying to be fun and cool because I was dating a much younger guy. And I went to a bar and I showed everyone at the bar how to do a flaming Statue of Liberty shot, which is basically sucking on your finger, making sure it's well coated with saliva, putting it in ouzo, lighting it on fire, holding it like this, and then
Putting it out in
dousing
your
the
mouth.
flames with your mouth. Well,
How shit-faced were you at this point?
oh my God, read my book.
I have.
Do you remember? I drank a bunch of shots.
Oh, yeah. Now
and
it's
I
all
ended up
coming back
having to
me.
go to the emergency room
Yes.
using an alias.
You should have known better, Katie
I
Couric.
should have known better.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one, Mole. Thank you.
By the way, I started by saying, "Are you satisfied?" And then she was like, "Oh, it's just sounds so dirty." And then she tells a story about making out with her boyfriend, and then this whole fucking.